What's up, everyone? It is Richie here, bringing you Season 3, Episode 4 of the F1 Podcast. Today is March 8th, and I'm here with our amazing co-hosts, Andrew and Erica. How are you guys doing today?
Great. How are you, man?
Amazing. We want to give a special shout out to Erica. Today is International Women's Day, and if you saw on the podcast, she did a great post and episode highlighting female representation in motorsport racing. Congratulations, Erica. That was amazingly done.
Oh, thanks, you two. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun to research. I probably could have done like 3 hours on it, trying to get it down into 10 minutes in a digestible format. Ooh, it's a challenge.
It was really amazing to listen to. So big kudos to you. And, really shines a light. Not a lot of people realize female representation in motorsport. And kudos to you, Erica.
The future looks bright, I'd say, for women in motorsport.
Filming this a couple of days after our amazing event at Trinity Common. We want to give a special shout out to Mike and Joanne for accommodating our group. We had about 30 people at the event, and there's about 100 people at the bar. I think it was just really exciting just to be there, and we hope to cover. Actually, we're going to be back there for the Saudi Grand Prix. So if you guys are interested in meeting up with us, please let us know, and we might have some spots available at our table. But I don't know. I'm just going to turn it over to you guys. Do you have any comments about our Trinity Common event?
I had a great time. I hadn't been to Trinity Common before. Have walked past it many a time. If you've been in the Kensington area of Toronto, absolutely packed in the summer, is impossible to get in. So it was nice to go in. I had French toast after seeing Cleary had ordered some French toast and had to jump on that bandwagon. So excited to go back to watch the race in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we can do more fun meetups and live races like that in the future.
I agree, Erica. The vibe, it was my first time going to Trinity Common as well in Kensington, and the vibe, as soon as I stepped in the door, was just immaculate. It had like that sports kind of bar vibe, but a lot like rustic. It was just on another level, and the food and the quality of drinks were again on another level. I say some of the best mimosas, and if not probably the best French toast I've had at any restaurant ever.
And I guess I just want to take another moment to shout out all the other fans that they weren't sitting with us, but they still came to talk to us afterwards and introduce us. Pretty sure our Instagram follower count jumped significantly after that event. So want to give a big shout out to the team there and everybody who came out. And we'll definitely see you at the next race on the 19th for the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. A couple of days after the Bahrain Grand Prix, interesting race with Max Verstappen winning yet again to kick off the 2023 season. We are going to do a new segment. This new segment is called the Fastest Lap Recap, presented by blank, and that is our special that is our shout out to all of our potential sponsors, because you can maybe sponsor this new segment. This new segment, how we're going to do it is after each race, we're going to try to summarize the race in the time that the fastest lap was accomplished. Joe did the fastest lap at Bahrain Grand Prix in 1 minute and 33 seconds. So what better way for Andrew to try to summarize the 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix in 1 minute and 33 seconds? And then we're going to talk a little bit afterwards about it. So Andrew, would you want to do the honors?
I'd love to. Well, someone's got to set the timer and keep me honest.
All right, give me 1 second.
Go
I'll
on.
bring it up
You
here.
can't just start it without telling me.
You're going to hear the most aggressive buzzer of all time. Here's 1 minute. Oh, that's hours. That would be quite the recap if I gave you an hour. You ready, Clary?
Mm-hmm.
3, 2, 1, go.
So Bahrain Grand Prix, first one to start off for the year. Quite a hot start on qualifying day where Q1 was separated by like over just 1 second, 1.1 second, which is a great accomplishment considering how close the cars are this year. Max Verstappen sets the pace on Q3 by posting the fastest lap and getting his pole position, followed by Sergio Perez. And the 2 Ferraris of Leclerc and Sainz, and then Fernando Alonso being the best of the rest, or the fastest of the rest, showing that Aston Martin is not a fluke. Kickstart to the race, beginning of the race goes, and Max Verstappen just jumps out to an early lead. Checo gets caught behind Charles Leclerc at the start, which then becomes an issue for Checo to fight for Max, and he couldn't get back up to that P1 spot to challenge him. What we did see, though, was some interesting retirements. Esteban Ocon had probably the worst day I've ever seen. Penalty after penalty after penalty, followed by Charles Leclerc, DNF, because his team sucks.
You lose.
Car issues first and foremost, and then Oscar Oscar Piastri. They have the issue going on with his engine. Must be still in a Google update. Who knows? With that said, we have Max Verstappen winning the race P1, followed by Sergio Perez, then followed by a Fernando Alonso beating out both Mercedes and both Ferraris to get to that P3 position. Standouts were Gasly going from P20 to P9 and Williams scoring their first point in the first part of the season with Alex Albon finishing in 10th place.
Do a barrel roll.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Wow, look at that.
That's
Also,
pretty
I
amazing.
hate that timer noise. I don't know how to change it.
For our new segment, Andrew, I think you killed it. Congratulations. But yeah, talk about an interesting first race of the season where we did see a lot of really interesting things going on. I think the one thing that really stood out for me for this weekend in Bahrain was just how close qualifying and just how close the cars were. We heard a lot of drivers talk about this was kind of one of their closest ever qualifying sessions where everything was within hundredths of a second or even hundreds of seconds. I don't know what your take was, but hopefully this means that it's going to be a more competitive grid this year. We saw the midfield and even the lower tier. It was not like a blowaway compared to maybe what the Red Bulls were pulling off this weekend, but just goes to show maybe there's some hope for the season. It's going to be more competitive.
I think it'll be interesting to see what the next few races hold in store. Going to qualifying, I mean, in Q1, we had Logan Sargent getting cut, but he posted the same time as Lando Norris, who was able to move on into Q2. So we're seeing some pace from the Williams, and I was also pretty impressed by Logan Sargent for his first week participating in the F1 car. So keen to see what he does from there. We do have a couple teams who have announced that they're expecting to release upgrades early on. So interesting to see if it'll allow some people to maybe catch up to the Red Bull, if it'll strengthen the bit of a battle that we see are in the midfield, and whether or not the folks that had a dismal first showing will be able to put a little bit more pace and pressure on the rest of the grid. What did you think, Cleary?
Yeah, I agree. I think the midfield battle, especially not even during qualifying, but during the race too, it was just incredible to watch how, teams that honestly, I did not rate Williams going in the beginning of this season. They surprised the hell out of me, especially Logan Sargent. Logan Sargent had a really great race for his, for his F1 debut. Previously when you think about F1 debuts, you think about Mazepin not even getting out of the first turn. It just goes to show that the quality of racing has gone up. The cars are getting better. I think Williams has done an amazing approach there in terms of getting in the points. And it was great to see that Albon getting P10. But what I thought was really interesting was how poor McLaren were this past weekend. I knew we knew they were going to be bad, but they were just horrendous.
You lose.
It was not my favorite race to watch. I did nearly cry in front of 100 people when Piastri had to retire. 6 pit stops just to keep Lando's car going during that race is absurd.
At that point, you might as well just retire the car because you are finishing absolute dead last. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When you take 6 pit stops in a race and the other teams are taking 2, 3 at the most, just retire the car.
I'm surprised they didn't. I mean, truthfully, he was so far behind even P16 because he ended up P17 after the 3 retirements. You're not getting points. You're dead last anyway, so it's not like you're jockeying for position in some way, shape, or form. I don't understand what the logic was, unless they're just viewing this as additional testing time and they just wanted a little bit more data to have to take with them going forward. But even then, the car's falling apart, man.
It definitely did. We talked about this before the season, is that there's going to be a lot of pressure on McLaren, and we kind of saw that in testing. But I could not think of a worse weekend for them, especially to start the season. It kind of reminded me of 2020 when we kind of see a lot of those reliability issues come off the forefront. I'll give you credit, Andrew, if I can jump to another team that really impressed me. Aston Martin. Wow.
Lose.
Just blowing it out of the water. Made those Mercedes look like they were literally driving B League cars or something. Some amazing racing from Fernando, and even Lance, even though his wrists were still kind of hurting in qualifying. I mean, I would have not raced him in the race because I try to be a good person, but I don't know how he was able to race on Sunday. But wow, talk about first podium since I think 2021 for Aston Martin. And also that was Fernando Alonso's 99th podium.
Wow. Really? I mean, I guess the guy has 2 championships under his belt, so he's got to have quite a few wins. But nonetheless, that's 99 podiums. That's an impressive stat.
No, I don't want to pump tires here, but I had an incredible race day on Sunday. even overall in the weekend, because through free practice, Aston Martin were looking very quick, setting like top 3 times in the charts. You're not really sure until qualifying in terms of when people are going to jack up their engines, run them up, see what to me, qualifying in Bahrain or qualifying the first race is really the key to see where you are on the pecking order in F1. But it was great to see that Alonso finished P5 behind the Ferraris and the Red Bulls, but over Russell and Hamilton. So to think that we can start, it gives me bold will to see we can start fighting for third place or P3 in the constructors with Mercedes was like really eye-opening, really inspiring to see, and especially Lance, finishing P8. And I don't know if you saw the Instagram or the social media post that he had after the race. His rehab to come back, where he was barely moving his fingers, he had pins in his wrists, broken toe. He just looked disheveled. And to think like 14 days later, he came back and finished P6 in this race. Honestly, the dude is a warrior. I have so much more respect for Lance. And all the funny jokes about daddy's money, yada, yada, yada. But that takes a lot of nerve, a lot of steel to just go, from that predicament to finish P6 and, fight and like overtake Russell there too to get into that P6 spot. I have to ask though, I don't know who had a worse day, Erica or John. That was a sad moment.
You lose.
For Leclerc.
It was tough because, I think at the start of the race, we were able to kind of jump into P2 and get past Sergio Perez. And then it got to a point where, we were kind of lagging behind, and then the reliability issues come back again. We kind of talked about this last year, is the reliability of the car is kind of going to be a big question mark, and especially for Fred. I believe it was a power unit issue with the
energy storage.
Yeah, so it's not easy. So I think, and the problem is Jeddah. I think it's Jeddah that we're going to next is not even that's a pretty fast track. So
the eye-opening part for me though was, I know that when in our preview show, I mentioned that Aston Martin last year were slow in qualifying, but quick, they had that great race pace on Sunday, just couldn't capitalize because they had started so far back. So happy to see that they do have a car now for Saturday that can qualify high and then have that race pace to, push them up a couple spots on the grid. But I was really surprised, to be honest with you, when Alonso and the Aston Martin overtook Sainz pretty easily in the Ferrari. And I think as a Ferrari fan, it's got to be a little eye-opening, because you were the second best car coming into last year. You should be the second best car coming into this year. But now that you're you're getting tested by a car that finished P7 last year, it's very, I don't know, to me, it's eye-opening.
It's definitely going to have some teams questioning what they've been doing so far. Because I think even comparing Aston Martin to McLaren is a team with a long-standing history that has a good chunk of money and devs behind it. And to have such an abysmal turnout when you've got Aston Martin, that as much as it's just been a rebranding and things of the sort, is still relatively new to the sport, and they can come in this hard and build pretty good momentum in the course of just a couple of seasons. You've got to feel like you have a target on your back, and that there's someone kind of coming to usurp your position in the grid rankings here. So if I'm Ferrari, if I am a Tifosi fan like John, I'm definitely a little worried. But if I'm working on the team, I am quaking in my boots right now.
Well,
scared to see what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
Well, it's good that you mentioned that, because it's not only those, not just at for Ferrari fans, but also teams that have Ferrari engines too. Because we did see this last year. A lot of those cars that were those teams that do have the Ferrari engine, were not reliable at certain moments of the season. I think definitely, hopefully they've been able to kind of make some changes going into obviously Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. I think there'll definitely, as you mentioned, there is definitely a target on their back. I think also one driver that really impressed me in his debut for his new team, if we can kind of move to a new team, is Pierre Gasly. The man started P20 on the grid and was able to jump up 10 spots. And he looked pretty good in that Alpine, especially when Ocon was just getting hit with penalties left, right, and center. I'm sorry, he got a 5-second penalty, and then he tried to serve it, and it was not a proper serve. What?
He got 5 seconds for not placing his car correctly into the grid spot. So you're automatically starting the season on the back burner. And then he tries to serve the 5-second, doesn't serve it correctly because he he screwed up the front wing too, and they started changing the front wing in too quick a time. So that created another 10-second penalty for him to serve. And I don't know if he had another 5-second penalty. I don't know. There was just so
He
many
did.
penalties. What was that for though?
Oh, I can't remember. I feel like it was something to do. I'm trying to remember. Yeah. So first, it was speeding in the pit lane. That's what it was when he was coming in later on. It wasn't a racing incident. I don't know if it was when he was coming in to serve one of the penalties or if it was just coming in at some point later on in the race, but he sped in the pit lane. And that was another 5-second penalty because it's 80 kilometers through the pit lane and he went 80.1 kilometers.
Oh my
a
goodness.
5-second penalty.
You
There's no
lose.
McLaren should have taken a page out of Alpine's book and just retired at that point because they retired Ocon after the third penalty. They were like, nope, not worth it. Let's save the car.
But like to think like how Ocon is like the lead driver technically at Alpine based on experience at that team, and just to get absolutely overshadowed by his teammate in week one. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Especially because they are both French drivers on a French team, and obviously one of them wants to probably be the French driver to lead the team. I also did point that Alpine, I don't know if they're gonna have a good relationship against both their drivers. Who's also probably laughing? I'm not trying to throw McLaren under the bus, but Daniel Ricciardo was probably laughing as a reserve driver.
Oh, I know we all talked about this, but if you're Lando Norris, you're looking for McLaren to pay you $18 million to not drive their car right now, too. I think that's the vibe we've got from this first race. You've got to be laughing if you're Daniel Ricciardo. You have to be like thinking that you made the best decision of your life after seeing everything fall apart over there, especially with the drama we had around Piastri joining the team to take his seat.
Are we sure that Piastri, speaking of Piastri, are we sure that he doesn't want to reword his statement from this previous year saying that he may not want to drive for McLaren ever again?
Yeah, I'm sure if he could go back, if I could turn back time, I'm sure Piastri would go back and maybe decide to stay with Alpine after all.
Like on your Chrome browser when you get like in the top right corner that you need to update, and it's viewed so long that it turns to like that black and orange update. Well, that apparently was on Piastri's car when he had to change the when he had changed the driving wheel because they forgot to update the system.
I still can't believe I can't remember a time I've ever seen them replace a driver's steering wheel in the middle of a race.
What was the reason for that?
There was something going on with the software that I guess wasn't connecting. Like he was having an issue with the downgift, or some mechanical issue, software issue in the steering wheel that required them to change it out. But once he changed it out, apparently the engine just conked out, like it died.
Eric, are they running Windows 98 over there? We got to figure something out.
I don't know. I mean, similar to the entire Canadian banking system, I think they're just like one bad update or one little bug away from the whole thing coming crashing down. And for those who don't understand the Canadian banking system, if you talk to anyone there, they're all running like Windows XP on, and those were Excel 98 to 03 to keep everything afloat.
You got to think for Bottas, he's got to be pretty sigh of relief here now, because he does not have now the longest pit stop in recorded history.
Yeah, that's got to be nice to have that title off your shoulders for sure.
I think I read it took like a week to get that nut off the car, the tire nut.
Really?
Yeah, and they finally they tweeted about it. They're like, we finally took it off or something like that. Also, speaking, I just want to jump back to Aston Martin. How did we did not mention to talk about this, but like literally the first lap, Stroll almost took Alonso out.
Oh geez, yeah.
Yeah, Ricci and I were yelling at each other at the bar.
All the time you have to leave a place.
Saying, Stroll, what are you doing?
I was a little worried because we did see him struggle a little in qualifying to bring the car around, and I was worried it had to do with his wrists. So seeing that so early on, I was like, that's it. He's not going to be able to make a turn when he needs to. At the very least, he won't have the endurance to finish the race. What a way to go. You just start recovering from major surgery after an accident, and then you crash a car. But fortunately, he held it together, right? That was pretty impressive.
It was honestly just unfortunate luck because both of them were trying to make a move at the same time, where Stroll was trying to go on the inside of Russell on the turn, and then Alonso tried to pull the switch back by going inside, and boom, just nipped him on the back. And I thought, oh man, because he lost a couple places after that, I was like, the race pace was not looking good there at the end. But then all of a sudden the tires came alive and he became a rockin'.
Messiah of Formula One.
Curious to see if McLaren is able to kind of bounce back. I think Red Bull had a pretty easy weekend.
I was just gonna say, we need to address some of the elephant in the room here. Red Bull look unstoppable.
Yeah, that is a dominant looking car and team right there right now. That's not something that you really want to mess with at the current moment, I don't think.
I think I'm reading this correctly, but Alonso was 38 seconds behind Sergio Perez, and then Perez was 11.9 seconds behind Verstappen. I wonder if he was Verstappen was even awake during this race.
I have a feeling he probably could have got a winker in there at some point.
Like in the scene in Talladega Nights when Sacha Baron Cohen's character is drinking like the macchiato in his NASCAR as he's in first place. I bet you Max was doing that during the race.
He's having a Red Bull energy drink.
A little Red Bull energy drink, a little macchiato, a little coffee.
A maxiato in his case.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I think they should have to force Red Bulls to start from like the entrance of the entire grounds before they can start the race, because otherwise it's just not going to be a fair fight all year.
Do a barrel roll.
Another thing I have my eyes on is Haas. So obviously I don't think qualifying went quite as well as they hoped, but it was a promising start with Nico Hülkenberg beginning in the P10 position. Clearly we did not, and Haas even mentioned this, they did not expect to keep that pace going for the entire race. But to fall down to 14th and to not really have Hülkenberg started from 10th, finished 14th. Magnussen was able to climb to 15th. I thought that said 14th. My bad. And then Magnussen was able to climb up to 13th. You're kind of wondering what's going on there, especially when in a couple races previous, if we go back to the 2022 season, K-Mag was able to pull off P1 as his starting point for Interlagos. So I think that's a team that's going to be really trying to figure out what was going on this weekend so they can hopefully replicate some top 10 starting positions, but capitalizing on Magnussen's ability to gain some spots within this and hopefully figure out how Nico Hülkenberg fell so far down the rankings with what was a rather chaotic race for those in the middle of the grid.
I like Nikenberg. We're going to keep that.
Nikenberg? We're going to keep Nikenberg?
Yeah, let's keep Nikenberg. That's a good one.
Okay.
Well, it's also interesting because, I don't know if we really, I have to recheck our last episode, but is the pressure really going to be on Gunter Steiner this year to kind of hopefully get out a little bit out of the bottom three? And Gene Haas is probably looking forward to every phone call after every race when they don't do well. So
I say, I don't think that was gonna be a fun phone call after that race on Sunday. I feel you just know he's just, as soon as Gunter's pressing the dial pad, he's like, oh, for crying out loud, this is gonna suck.
I mean, if you are Gunter though, you're sitting there going, at least we're not McLaren, right? And off you go about your way. But I do wonder, because I know we were saying that there are some questions if you're someone who's using a Ferrari engine around the reliability. So I'm wondering if part of what happened to Hülkenberg had to do with the engine's performance, if maybe it's just the fact, the guy's been out of the sport for the year, needs a little bit of time to get reacquainted with race pace and how to go about racing in that car. But I would like to see Haas do well. I really would like to see them get back to where they were a few years ago. So we will see what's going on in the next couple of races for that team. That was my last little nugget of information that I had.
My last nugget of information is I was surprised how good AlphaTauri were this weekend. I thought, again, another team like Williams down in the basement were going to do very well. Yuki was fighting Albon for P10 towards the end there, and they were competitive in the lap times. So, it just goes to show that our predictions could be way off. But 7 teams finished in the points this weekend, so that is really great to see. That midfield battle again, just starting it up hot to begin with. So exciting to see. And if Aston Martin can finish P2 by the end of the constructor season, I will go jump into the Lake Ontario and do the polar bear freeze.
Oh, I'm going to hold you to that, Cleary. I am going to hold you to that.
Yeah, you got it. If they finish P2, I will do the polar dip in Lake Ontario.
You know what? I'll join you.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'll do it too. We'll discuss. We will actually, you know what? You're hearing this right now. If Aston Martin comes P2 in the constructors, I will do the polar bear dip.
Looks like we're going to Woodbine. Let's do this thing.
So I think that was a very interesting week. That was, especially with that first race of the season, just pulling up our fantasy. Other big thing is, I know last year we did a fantasy, didn't get much traction on it, but this year we decided to open it up to our fans. I think on our fantasy, we were able to get 11 people to join. Starting after the first week, we have, I think it's Adam Bilton at first place, and then JC, I think, is that your dad?
That's my dad.
He is second at 1,038 points, and then myself at 1,036 points. Erica, you're at 1,016, and Andrew's at 1,006. Keep in mind, your dad did it 5 minutes before the closing minute.
This guy does it 5 minutes before, and he complains about how bad his team did on qualifying. He's like, I'm not going to get any points. And then his team on race day he had Gazzy, right? Goes from P20 to P9. He had Alonso double pointed. He had Max. He had Aston Martin as his constructors. And then I told him to stay. He was like, oh, wow.
Well, I think Alonso was a sleeper pick. And I think maybe probably after next week, you're not going to be able to double star him for on Grid Rivals. So.
Oh, you're not. I tried already. You're not.
You can't really. They've already made that call.
Yeah. It sucks.
Wow. Interesting. And for those of you using F1 Fantasy for your leagues, they've updated some of the rules this year. So interesting to see that you have 2 constructors now, whereas previously it was 1. And it used to be you could only turbo drivers who were under $20 million a piece. You can turbo just about anyone. I'm pretty sure I saw someone turbo Max Verstappen for the 2 times points. So I really got to dig into that, because I was just assuming that other than the second driver, it was going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in any of those leagues and you've figured out a new nifty trick, please let me know, because I am not doing well in my office fantasy pool. I'm 5th of 14, which is fine, but it's not where I'd like to be.
Oof. That's all I gotta say. Womp, womp, womp. Okay, so lots to discuss, lots to think about for Saudi Arabia on the 19th. We will be back at Trinity Common. Please let us know in the comment section on YouTube, or also send us a note on Instagram if you would like to join our table. We do have some additional spots available. Myself, Andrew, and Erica are going to be there. We're excited to return. And, we can sleep in a little bit because the race is going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Andrew, you want to do the honors and kick us off?
For sure. So again, thank you everyone again for not only for those who came to Trinity Common on Sunday, but for those listening to season 3, episode 4 of the F1 podcast. Again, happy International Women's Day. For this episode, please follow us on, for general, please follow us on Instagram at f1.podcast. Please subscribe to XReach's YouTube channel for some great F1 podcast content, including a video that he is developing right now to showcase our weekend at Trinity Common. And then as well, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Until next week, where we're going to have an episode discussing the week that was in F1. But let's see if the results can duplicate themselves at the Jeddah Grand Prix, because I will be a very happy man.